Welcome. In any project, there's one single process that really separates the winners from the losers. It's not about the fancy execution or the big launch at the end. It's all about the very first step, collecting requirements. If you get this right, you're building your project on solid rock. But if you get it wrong, you're basically building on quicksand. So in this explainer, we're going to break this whole thing down like a top-tier consultant would, giving you a playbook to lock in success right from day one. So let me just start by asking you a question. I want you to think about all the projects you've seen go completely off the rails. You know the ones. They miss their deadlines, they blow the budget, or the final product just isn't what anyone wanted. What do you think is the number one reason, the single biggest driver behind all that chaos? If you were thinking unclear requirements, you absolutely nailed it. Seriously, according to pretty much every project management study out there, this is the silent killer of projects. It's where that dreaded scope creep comes from, it's why budgets balloon out of control, and it's the main reason deadlines get missed. So getting this process right isn't just some administrative task you check off a list, it is the single highest leverage thing you can do to de-risk your entire project. Okay, so how do we actually master this? Well, we're going to tackle this like a strategic consulting project, broken down into 5 distinct acts. First, we'll dig into why requirements are the bedrock of success. Then we'll talk about assembling all the key info you need before you even start. Next, we'll open up the elicitation toolkit, all the different ways to get that information. After that, we'll focus on crafting the project blueprint, turning all those conversations into a solid plan. And finally, we'll cover how to adapt your approach, because not every project is the same. Let's dive in. All right, let's kick things off with Act 1, Why Requirements Define Success. Look, before we jump into all the cool tools and techniques, we have to get our heads around why this is so foundational. Any great consultant will tell you you can't build a skyscraper on a shaky foundation. And in the world of project management, that foundation is a crystal clear, totally shared understanding of what done and successful actually look like. So the official project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK, has this formal definition. It says collect requirements is about determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs. But let's translate that from project speak. This is not just about making a to-do list, not at all. This is about creating the literal DNA of your project. Every single requirement you define becomes the basis for your entire work breakdown structure, your WBS. It directly drives your cost estimates, your schedule, your quality checks, everything. Your requirements are the architecture of your project, period. Okay, so that leads us right into Act 2, assembling your inputs. I want you to think of this like packing your briefcase before you walk into a huge client meeting. You wouldn't just show up empty-handed and wing it, right? No way. You'd walk in armed with all the essential intelligence, ready to ask the smart questions and steer the conversation. So what's in this metaphorical briefcase? First up, the project charter. This is your official mandate, your North Star. It's the document that says, you have the authority to do this. Next, the stakeholder register. Think of this as your political map of the organization. It tells you who you need to talk to, who has the power, and who you just need to keep in the loop. Then there's the assumption log, so crucial for uncovering hidden risks by getting all those unspoken beliefs out in the open. You've also got your lessons learned register. This is your corporate memory. It's how you avoid making the same mistakes over and over. And finally, and maybe most importantly, the business case. This document answers the big question, why are we even doing this? It's what connects every single requirement back to actual business value. And now for Act 3, the elicitation toolkit. Okay, you've done your homework, you've got your inputs. Now it's time to actually go out and get those requirements. This is where the real art and science of being a great project manager comes into play. It's about having a whole toolkit at your disposal and knowing exactly which tool to pull out for any given situation. The first tool, and probably the most common, is the good old-fashioned interview. This is your chance to go deep with someone, one-on-one. It is perfect for building trust with your key stakeholders, and it's especially useful for getting at sensitive or confidential information that somebody might not want to say out loud in a big group meeting. This is where you get the real story. Then you've got focus groups. This is where you bring a bunch of stakeholders into a room together. And the magic here isn't just about what each person says. It's about the interaction between them. You see the group dynamics play out. An idea from one person can spark an even better one from somebody else. It creates this awesome conversational energy that can uncover things you just never find in a series of individual interviews. So which one do you pick? Well, it's all about the trade-offs. You use interviews when you really need to drill down into one person's perspective or if the topic is sensitive. But you use focus groups when you want to cast a wider net, brainstorm a bunch of ideas, and really see how different viewpoints clash or come together. Choosing the right tool for the job is what it's all about. Now, for another really powerful tool, one that's become absolutely essential in today's world: the prototype. A prototype is basically a working model, a sneak peek of the final product. The whole idea is to get feedback early and often. So instead of spending 6 months building something based on a document, you build a small, tangible piece of it, put it in front of your stakeholders, and ask, hey, is this what you were picturing? And this gets to a core principle of modern project management: show, don't just tell. A written requirement like the system needs to be user-friendly is, well, it's useless, right? It can mean 100 different things to 100 different people. But a prototype? That makes it real. It turns an abstract idea into something people can actually see and click on and react to. And that just crushes the risk of misunderstandings and costly rework down the line. All right, so we've used our toolkit, we've gathered a mountain of great information. Now what? We move into Act 4, crafting the project blueprint. All that elicitation work is totally pointless if the information just stays scribbled in notebooks or on whiteboards. The goal here is to synthesize all of it into clear, actionable documents that the entire team can follow. The first major output is the requirements documentation itself. This document explains how every single requirement helps meet the business need. But here's the catch. For this to work, every requirement has to pass a few tests. It's got to be unambiguous, traceable, complete, and consistent. You should really think of this document as the formal contract between your team and your stakeholders. It's the official agreement on what exactly is going to be delivered. The second critical output is something called the Requirements Traceability Matrix, or RTM. Now, if the documentation is the what, the RTM is the why and the how. This grid is your ultimate weapon against scope creep and for keeping everyone accountable. It connects every requirement back to a business objective and forward to a specific deliverable. So when a stakeholder comes to you asking for a new feature, you can just point to the RTM and ask, great idea, which business objective does this support? It instantly shows everyone the real impact of any proposed change. Let's see how this works in the real world. Just take a look at this example RTM. Let's trace requirement 001. The requirement is, user must be able to log in with email. Okay, simple enough, but why are we doing it? The RTM links it directly to the business objective: improve user access. And how are we going to do it? It's traced right to the WBS deliverable, 1.1 user authentication. You see? This makes it perfectly clear that every single piece of work is tied directly to business value. There are no random nice-to-have features floating around. Everything has a purpose. And this brings us to our final act: adapting to your environment. Because let's be real, a one-size-fits-all approach to requirements just doesn't fly. Any top consultant knows you have to tailor your strategy to the specific project you're on. And the two main environments we see today are predictive and agile. Okay, so in a predictive or waterfall project, think about building a bridge, the scope is fixed. You do all the hard work up front to collect every single requirement and lock them down in a detailed document. Change is the enemy. But in an agile or adaptive project, like developing a new mobile app, you expect and welcome change. The scope is dynamic. Requirements are discovered as you go in short cycles. Stakeholders are involved constantly, giving feedback. And your main output isn't some static document, it's a living, breathing, prioritized list called a product backlog. And the takeaway here is simple. Trying to use a waterfall approach on an agile project is a guaranteed recipe for failure, and vice versa. You have to match the method to the madness. So I'll leave you with one last provocative thought. This whole process of collecting requirements, it's not just a mechanical exercise. It forces you and your stakeholders to answer a really fundamental question. Are you just here to build a project from a checklist of features, or are you actually trying to solve a real underlying business problem? The absolute best project managers, the best consultants, they always focus on solving the problem. Because at the end of the day, delivering real, tangible value is the only requirement that truly matters.